The Beavers fell to Colorado in a slugfest at Reser.
And now the direct snap to Dahl, wrecks his way right in for the Beaver touchdown.
Corey Hall's first game as head coach saw the Beavs outgain the Buffs through the air and on the ground.
With a flip back to Garrettson, and then the home run shot to Villeman, 2-10.
A bye to tighten things up this week, which means we bring in a familiar face. Former defensive coordinator Mark Banker joins us for the next half hour. Beavers Inside the Huddle starts now.
Everybody be a playmaker today. Here we go. He goes toward the back of the end zone. Touchdown, Beavers!
Well, after a much improved performance in that house right there, Reser Stadium, the Beavs are on a bye, which means we can bring in a former coach of the Beavs and Mark Banker, along with Steve Priest and former defensive coordinator Mark Banker. I'm Dusty Air. Coach Banker, what have you been up to, man? How you been?
Well, that's a good question. I've been well, thank you. Good to see you too, Steve.
Thanks, Coach.
But just staying busy. A little bit of a hiatus here this season. I've had some opportunities to go overseas. I've been to Vienna, Austria, in February, working with a team over there in their preseason. Just this past week, I was in Istanbul, Turkey. Commencement speaker from Oregon State. Founded a university over there back in 2008, I believe it was, and they play university football over there. They're in their third year. Wanted to improve the program. Got over there and worked with that team for this past week. Somewhere in between there, I went up to Canada, went up with the BC Lions, and was a guest coach for 4 weeks up there. It was a fabulous experience, you know, and that's kind of what I've been trying to do also, broaden my horizon, see some different things, ways of doing things. Obviously, find out what they do with that 12th man in the CFL, which is very enjoyable. And then the other thing that's become a little bit of a passion, I was working with them when I was at Nebraska, Atavis. Atavis is a tackling group, started with its roots in rugby, and I've been working with their technical board as well as doing some lecturing and some things like that. They do some things with tackalytics, as well as just a newer, safer form of tackling that takes the head out of things. It's such a hot topic nowadays with concussions and things like that. And I think as football goes forward, obviously, in order to perpetuate this game, things like that, finding ways to better protect players will come in handy. And it's been fun doing that as time has gone by.
Coach, you had some years at Oregon State that were absolutely fantastic, big wins. What were some of the games that you remember at Oregon State that were special?
Oh, I'd have to probably start out with kind of grouping them together. The 98 and the 2007 Civil War games. Both games ended the same way. You know, Kenny Simonton taking the counter tray down the right sideline, and James Rogers finished it off pretty much the same way, going down the right sideline, just that it was in odds. In fact, that was the first time, I think, in nine years that the home team, the visiting team won, and then, of course, that game ended up with a goal or 4th and 1, Jonathan Stewart stopping them so that we could win that game in a double overtime.
4th and 1, not a lot of people stopped Jonathan Stewart, and your guys bowed their back right there. I mean, that was a load of a running back.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it wasn't the largest person on the field either. It was, if the Beaver fans remember Derek Doggett, he was the one. He had his eyes glued to him. He came across that formation. Alan Darling kind of started that thing off. He had blitzed the A-gap away to push him to the far side A-gap, and Dorian Smith ended up finishing him off. It was a heck of a win on the road.
You remember so much of these plays and individual efforts and so forth. You told us about some games, but tell us about some of the players. You've all mentioned 3 or 4 already, but talk about guys who have been really special, really different, really unusual that you miss.
Well, first of all, you know, that's a setup right there, because I'm bound to hurt somebody's feelings, but I know just specifically because I spent most of my time there in the secondary, and then specifically with the safeties. But you know, 2 guys that come to mind right away: Al Afalava, you know, big hitter, just a fun, exciting player to watch. Mitch Musin, that I had an opportunity to coach with later on as a graduate assistant, and you know, not that you have to be a coach in this world, but he would have made a tremendous coach. I always enjoyed him. He was so intellectual when it came to the game, and then also just a great player. And then, you know, one of the all-time favorites, well, of course, was Sabby. I've got to mention Sabby Piscatelli's name because now known as Tino Sabatelli in the WEE world. Those are three of my favorites just at that position.
Well, there's a big favorite in Corvallis right now, and it's the wrecking Null, Ryan Null. And we got a chance to catch up with him after practice the other day during the bye week to talk about the messaging from Coach Corey Hall in his first game as the head coach against Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he said it. He's not worried about the score. That means that he's more worried about us and how we're improving, you know, all around. And you know, even though we didn't get the win that we wanted to, we were able to, you know, kind of reach our personal goals. We were worried about us, and you know, he always says for the players, by the players, and he means that. So I think that, you know, his speech was kind of what we needed. That even though, yeah, we lost, but you know, look at the step that we took from where we were.
Well, and as you see it right there, the offense exploded. For the first time this year, you outgained your opponent in both passing and rushing yards, and obviously in the total yardage, time of possession was huge. You know, Steve, what did we learn maybe about Corey Hall in that first game?
Well, we learned he had fire in his belly, that's for sure. He led the team on the field. He led them every day in practice the same way. I had the pleasure with my Giant Killer guys of going to a couple of practices, and it was exciting. It was fun, and I think that's what we've learned about him. He's a very good technical coach, too. I'll tell you that at his position, but he took over the leadership. He was forceful in it. I know, Coach, you've seen them. You're living in Corvallis. What is a coach like that as an interim guy? I mean, it's got to be difficult as heck, but he really did a good job.
Well, it's difficult. There's a lot of dynamics. Anywhere from, of course, the team is first, your coaching staff to keep them going, because you know, what is the light at the end of the tunnel? Well, you don't want to look too far down the line. You look from day to day, from game to game, and as a professional, first and foremost, you take care of the team. You get the team leaders also to rally the troops, because that's all you really have at that particular time and that particular moment. You have each other, and we're all evaluated day in and day out, and I think that everybody knows that. And then, you know, you've got to do some things to make it fun and enjoyable, and one game at a time, keep the players focused on you know, themselves and their techniques and getting better, you know, the main focus is the end all is doing your best and winning the game.
Best performance of the year for sure for the Beavs, both offensive and defensively. So he did some things very well because there were results.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we're just underway. Former Beavs defensive coordinator Mark Banker with us. What type of person will it take to be the next head coach at Oregon State? That later. But coming up next, we revisit Steve's keys to the game against the Colorado Buffaloes. It's time to revisit Steve's keys to the game, brought to you by your local Northwest Honda dealer. Stop by a local Honda dealer or visit us online today at northwesthondadealers.com. How'd you do, Steve?
Well, you know, you look at the first one, and all defensive coaches say this, don't they, Coach Banker, where you say, hey, you take out that 174-yarder, and it was a pretty good day. But that is the truth with this defense. They played really strong. They put pressure out there. They did a lot of good things, save this one play. And Lindsey's been this way all season. You saw some good effort, but boy, that was a backbreaker early that the Beavs came back from. Did a good job in item number one. On the second side, we talked about some offense and get the ball to the playmakers. Yep. And, you know, Seth Collins, we find out at game time, isn't playing, and he's the #1 playmaker for the season and for the week before. They did get the ball to the playmakers. They got into a lot of other people. When we have the biggest day we've had offensively in 4 years, that's pretty good. So they did the right thing there. And last but not least, play for 60 minutes. We hadn't seen a 60-minute game. I'm not sure we'd seen a true 30-minute game all season. And they played pretty darn close to 60 minutes on both sides of the ball. Pretty impressive.
You know, Coach, when you looked at that game, after containing Lindsey outside of that 74-yard run, what did the defense do well last week against that Colorado attack?
Well, you know, I read the papers just like anybody else. You know, I'm not an insider per se, but I know there's been a lot made about lack of tackling.
Yeah.
And I thought in the first half they really did a great job at tackling. It just seemed to be more of a collective issue. That also comes with 11 guys constantly running to the ball, because somebody's bound to make a mistake. But if you've got that next wave coming, you know, you're gonna do a better job at that. And as Steve pointed out, the big plays will get you eventually. And you know, save from that one again in the first half. I just thought both sides of the ball, specifically in that first half, really allowed them to go into that locker room, come back out with momentum and with confidence to play a more complete game, as you said, you know, from a standpoint of a season standpoint.
Well, we, on the offensive side of the ball, got a chance to catch up with Corey Hull after his first game as the head coach and talk to something that really stuck out to Steve Priest in the game as well.
What we're going to focus on this week at practice to turn those field goals into actual touchdowns is we're going to just become competitive, okay? Because even if you look at the red zone statistic on defense, they were down there 4 times and they scored 4 times. So you're going to turn up the competitive periods, and we're going to go offense versus defense. We're going to split up the teams, and we're going to do competitive red zone drills. Okay, you're going to see us do competitive third down drills. We're going to bring it back, be physical, 9-on-9 drills. And so the focus is going to be when we get down there, because I believe prior to this, we were pretty efficient in the red zone, you know, in our red zone scoring offense. So again, it's about getting back to basics. You know, we can't be one-sided, you know, and have one element or aspect of the offense perform well and then have a kind of a down day in another area. And so we're really going to focus on being competitive down there in the red zone this week with our time off and making our plays.
Coach, I always feel like that with field goals, you give them up. On defense, it's a win if you hold them to a field goal, as you know. And I felt like Oregon State did not stay as aggressive. They did a great job of calling plays this week. They mixed it, the formation, as we said earlier, but they didn't stay quite as aggressive as they got closer to that field goal. I thought that it was a smart move because they were winning the football game and they needed the 3 points every time. But what's your analysis of that? You're a defensive guy. That was a win for the opponent last week.
Colorado, yeah. You know, I think one thing you said at the end, it's also situational, because sometimes you know, you want to go all gas, no brakes, but at the same time you've got to come away and get points. And it's just those first and second down plays that lead into the third down play that because I thought in the course of the game, especially again in that first half, the use of the 2 backs in the backfield. Yeah. With Garrettson out on the perimeter, kind of a wildcat, but it was more than a wildcat because you definitely had 2 options as far as handing the ball off. Bringing Garrettson over the top later on ended up being a big play. They flipped the ball to him, and things like that. And you know, again, I'm a coach. I always will be, and there's no second guessing. But it's just a matter of, as Corey said, you know, talking about competitiveness and things like that, but being very thoughtful and making sure that you have the game plan that's necessary to take advantage of those situations, because you get one shot. You get one shot at a game. Once a week, you get to play one game, and once a shot, you may be able to only get down in that red zone, and you've got to score points.
All right, we still got more to come with former Beavs defensive coordinator Mark Banker. Talking about a guy he wanted to play linebacker for him, Ryan Nall, with a great performance against the Buffs.
And now the direct snap to Nall, works his way right in for the Beaver touchdown. Nall for 6. So can Oregon State take the lead? Nall's going to get there. Touchdown.
All right, time for the Carrier Expert Pick, brought to you by your local Carrier heating and air conditioning dealers. Carrier turned to the experts. Ryan Nall had a day against Colorado, 172 yards. That's the Ryan Nall we got used to last year. 3 touchdowns. He did miss 1 game, that USC game, as noted at the bottom. Ryan Nall coming up huge for the Beavs. last week against Colorado, kept him in that game.
Well, for sure. He did exactly what he's supposed to do. The offensive line blocked well. I think Coach Banks said it earlier. They had different formations. They used 2 backs. They tossed him the ball. They did so many different things for him and to him. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I think is an expert pick with Ryan Nall is the story you brought up a few minutes ago. I want to know why Coach Banker was going to play him on defense at linebacker.
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever watched. I didn't watch much offensive tape on him when we were recruiting him. I watched the defensive tape, and then I did see a little bit of him as an offensive player, especially late in the season in the playoff game. But that combination of speed, strength, agility that he has, I think that's just perfect ingredients for a linebacker, especially in our 4-3 scheme, with that middle linebacker being able to just go from sideline to sideline. And couple that with some toughness. The only thing that we couldn't close the deal on was that we just told him, we said, you can still run with the ball, you just need to intercept it or scoop and score it for a touchdown.
Perfect.
Hey, I think you would have got a ton of turnovers if that was the case. Ryan Nall looked more comfortable in the Beavs' win against Colorado. That is for sure. But his quarterback, Darryl Garretson, also looked far more comfortable and confident under center. We got a chance to catch up with him after practice on kind of what's been clicking for Darryl Garretson.
Yeah, I'm just comfortable again, and you know, I think just the play calls and the execution, and kind of once you get the confidence going, and especially the way we did starting out the first drive, we went right down the field and doing all that. So I think it was just a really good confidence builder for us as an offense.
Well, there it is. It was a confidence builder. They did a lot of things and were productive. What did you see, former quarterback Steve Priest, in Darryl Garretson, that it looks like it's clicking? And that's something you were telling me last week before the game. He looked different in practice leading up.
Yes, he looks like he's accepted the fact that he is the team leader coach. He's a guy he was 20 for 37, I think was the result in 289, his career best at Oregon State. He's got great feet, as you can see from the way he runs. He isn't running as much option stuff as you see here on a reverse. You know, another new play, a trick play that's a big play for the Beavs. He can do so many things and gives what defensive coaches know is something that causes them fits. This is a quarterback who can move around if he can just stay healthy. A pretty good day right there as you look at his quarterback rating and everything. And again, confidence, I think, is the difference in Darryl Garretson this past week.
All right, we are joined here by former Beavs defensive coordinator Mark Banker. He's been around the program for a ton of years, and we still have got some more to come with him, including what it's going to take to be the next head coach at Oregon State. It takes a special kind of guy to go down to Corvallis and have that success that he and Mike Riley had for years. We've got you covered with all sorts of Beavers programming. Talking Beavs Wednesdays, 7 o'clock inside the Huddles. We got you at 9:30 because the game next week is on Thursday, folks, not in our regular day. And then Go Beavs is Thursday before the kick at 5 o'clock. All right, as we're here with Mark Banker, former defensive coordinator for the Oregon State Beavers. Beavs in the market for a new head coach. You've been around this program for many years. What kind of person, what kind of coach does it take to be successful at Oregon State University?
Well, you know, number one, you know, Scott Barnes and the people that are involved at the university, they'll come up with a profile of all the different things that they want in their head coach. But just from the nuts and bolts aspect of it is that, you know, have to have some, obviously, awareness of the program. We always used, for example, Washington State as a measuring stick because we felt that we had to be better than them. Maybe it's just from a facility standpoint. We're in the same location. In the Northwest, didn't even worry about the schools down south, but that's no longer true because they've increased their facilities, they've had recent success and things like that. But you've got to have awareness of you know, where you stand in the world. Let's face it, and how you go about recruiting, it will be big. You've got to be able to come in and hit the ground running. There's all sorts of things that come into play. You know, you hire a coach that is a head coach, you know, sitting head coach. Do you hire a coordinator because of his scheme. I don't think that's the case. I think you hire somebody that has the things that you're looking for as a university to be able to take the program forward, because we've missed the 2014 recruiting season. You're going to basically be hurt a little bit in the 2017 recruiting season, and you need to be able to go forward with that. So you need to have somebody come in that's ready to go, hit the ground running, and have a staff in mind and not have to piece this thing together. You've got to get up and go. Otherwise, the program's going to take yet another step backwards, and we don't want that to happen.
So how does the recruiting itself, you've mentioned it briefly, how does the recruiting force the timing of this coach selection? Does it mean that the Beavers have to be working through it right now? Are they doing it at the end of the season? Is it the plugs pulled right when the season's over? What happens? Well,
there's a couple things. There's a new factor this year. There's a new early signing period, December 20th. So there's a good chance that that will be missed unless this staff wants to be able to put their best foot forward to be able to say, hey, these are the guys that we have, and gee, I recruited these people, and then somebody will keep them on that comes in new. And then you still have the first, Wednesday in February, but you've got to be able to come in with the recruits. You've got to have an idea of the territory, and it can't be a restarting over process when it comes to recruiting. Our first recruiting season, 1997, was a lot like that. And luckily, we hit on some guys, and they're going to have to do the same thing.
All right, Coach Banker, that insight, the Oregon State insight, is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we appreciate you coming by.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
We're not going to kick you off, but Corey Hall will be on with us next week as the Bees play Thursday night down on the farm, taking on Stanford.